evening, everyone. Welcome. Very good to have you here. And also a very warm welcome to our viewers online to this program, The Turkish Elections, What's at Stake? 3 months after the devastating earthquakes, Turkey is gearing up for its upcoming presidential and parliamentary elections at the 14th of May. Will the country's longest-serving leader, after 20 years in power, win voters' hearts yet again? We are going to discuss this with the well-respected journalist Banu Güven, who reported for years on Turkish politics and knows all the ins and outs. Yes, where is the country heading to, and what will be the election outcome? If there's anyone who can make a good analysis of this, it's definitely tonight's guest, Banu Güven. So give her a warm round of applause. Welcome. Very good that you're here, and let me give you a proper introduction. You don't need the mic because you have
sure.
you have another mic here.
Yeah.
Only if the one's not working. So Banu Güven is a Turkish journalist. She's a TV presenter, and over 14 years she worked at the Turkish TV channel NTV, and she brought political news into the homes of millions of Turkish people. And due to the political situations and restriction on press freedom, she left Turkey for Germany. She writes, reports, and she comments on German media, such as WDR or Deutsche Welle, and also the Turkish Arte TV, about human rights, domestic and foreign policy. And she's also been awarded many prizes, including the German Nannen Prize for extraordinary journalistic achievement. And she's here to talk about the elections and about Turkish future, first with me, and in the end there will be plenty of time for you to ask questions. So let's welcome her again, Banu Güven.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me here. Thank you very much for coming.
Welcome. You came to Germany from Turkey some weeks ago.
Yeah.
Can you tell us something about the atmosphere? So the elections are upcoming 14 May. How was the atmosphere in Turkey?
Tense. In one word, it's tense. People are also very hopeful at the same time. On the one camp, there is more a feeling of concern Erdogan's side, because they may lose the election, not in the first round, maybe in the second one, most probably. And on the other side, people are tired of Erdogan. And this time they really have high hopes that something could change after all, after a good 20 years or more. So there's also hope. This is the good thing. And hope doesn't help alone. So there has been really, you witness a country from abroad, from far away. Maybe if you look at Turkey, you only see Erdogan, but there is also a big and very strong democratic opposition and movement, I would say, in Turkey, despite all the anti-democratic interventions.
And if you're talking about the atmosphere, you also mentioned it's a bit tense. We also saw this in the Netherlands last week. The riot police had to come because a fight broke out between two groups who were voting for the elections. Is this also what you mean with tensions, what you saw in Turkey?
Well, recently the tension is growing, and then there are reports. I'm also talking to some candidates. They have been attacked by far-rightists, actually, from Erdogan's side of the political landscape. I would say MHP people, supporters, that's the far-right nationalist party who is supporting Erdogan. And was also not in a coalition government, but was supportive of Erdogan's government. Yeah, mostly they attack the pro-Kurdish party or even CHP. For example, the mayor of Istanbul, who was a CHP candidate back then, and who actually had to beat Erdogan not once, but twice in Istanbul, because the president, he was the main figure of AKP's propaganda back then during the communal elections. So he made it twice, and that's why he's being hated, I would say, by Erdogan's government. So he was, for example, attacked in an eastern city, Erzurum, and his bus, where he was having a speech, talking to people, was stoned. So some people got wounded. And the Minister of Interior, the very same night, said that İmamoğlu, the mayor himself, was the provocateur. He himself made others attack himself and others, and then there weren't really wounded people. And you know, this is such kind of a disinformation. And the sad thing is, many people who are still supporting Erdogan want to believe in these lies. So he was saying that İmamoğlu was a liar, but while he was saying it, he was lying. So, yeah.
Difficult. And if you're talking about reporting the elections, if you look at Turkish journalists who are now in Turkey, and if you look at the Turkish media landscape, almost 90% of the media are in hands of Erdogan or
even more
businessmen who are affiliated to him. So
yeah.
If you are a Turkish journalist right now, can you report critically on the elections?
Yes, you can report critically on the elections, but then there are like tens of problems, tens of or hundreds of problems you can face. Like, first of all, on the social media, there's a shitstorm you have to face. For example, myself, because I'm writing for Deutsche Welle frequently, regularly, I just gave up reading the comments, you know, because you're being called a traitor, spy, whatever. But you get used to it, you know. Still, I have a lawyer in Turkey. Yeah. I'm really, some guys, they have to pay for it because there are really threats coming and things like that. And then there's this mechanism, you can go and file a complaint online, on the internet, on the website of the presidency. Then there are tens of complaints about you. And then if I'm seeing some familiar faces, hi. And then if the prosecutor is somehow okay, you're not being called for interrogation. Otherwise, you have to go and visit every 2 months or so the prosecutor, and then try to explain that not what you did isn't wrong. So this is the general situation. And during election period, it's getting more and more complicated, more difficult to work in Turkey as a journalist, because you have to have, for the government, you have to have the official press card. In Turkey, believe it or not, the government doesn't count me as a journalist because I am resisting, I refute the idea of having an official press card approved by the government. So in their eyes, I'm not a journalist, but I am a journalist, and I've been in this job like more than 30 years now. So if you travel and report in the eastern part of the country, in Kurdish cities. If they come, if the police would come to you and ask you about your press card, you may show the international one, but if they want, they just take you away there, or they just want you to leave. And talking about the Kurdish region, in Turkey, Erdogan almost managed to have a full media capture, almost, but he won't make it, I hope, because I don't believe that he's going to win this time. Yeah, but this is one thing, this is the general problem, but then you have the Kurdish media, which is being treated differently than the overall media.
And what do you mean with the Kurdish media? Is this, like, what's the difference between Kurdish and Turkish
their
media?
headquarters, I mean, agencies or newspapers, and they deal, they don't care for the taboos, and they are very critical. They report from inside, and they are critical of the government and the policies, and they are reporting about the truth, you know. They are just reporting the truth. And this is not allowed for them, especially. So in the last couple of weeks, we've seen like almost 10 Kurdish journalists from an agency, Mesopotamian news agency, being arrested. And it goes this way. People come and crash through your door at midnight or very early in the morning. And then if you ask why, you don't get an answer, because at the same time, at the meantime, they are looking for evidence. You see? I mean, so first comes the arrest. Then, if there is some evidence, what they can find at your home. If they cannot find anything, they'll somehow manage to build some evidence, I would say, establish some evidence against you. So this is very difficult. We actually, the headquarters of the Turkish media is mostly in Ankara, Istanbul, and the journalists, non-Kurdish journalists, really have to develop an empathy vis-à-vis their friends, their colleagues in the Kurdish cities.
You mean they don't do this enough right now?
No, they've never done it enough, in my opinion. And if you do it enough, you get, of course, you get, you have to face some consequences. Like in my case, I mean, I was critical about the Kurdish issue. I was for a free and critical reporting, and also I wasn't accepting back then, 12 years ago, the limitations the government wanted to set at the very first news channel where I was working for 14 years. I didn't accept it. They tried to, and they did. I mean, they censored one of the guests I was going to have. A very prominent Kurdish figure. She had to spend 10 years in prison, Leyla Zana, and then she was released, and she was a candidate in the elections in 2011. And she wanted to come to me because she was watching the late night news I was doing while she was in prison. She knew me. She wanted to come and talk to me, and it was a big thing. But then suddenly,
your
everything
editorial
changed,
office
and I
didn't
was
agree.
told she cannot come because 2 days in advance, there was this communist novelist. He also a very important political figure, and he was in his 90s. He came to he didn't go anywhere. It was an exclusive interview. He wanted to come to me, Vedat Türkali is his name, because he wanted to talk about this pre-election possibilities, what could be done, especially on the Kurdish issue. And he sent his regards to Öcalan, the leader of the
PKK?
PKK, the Kurdish Workers' Party, Labour Party, and I don't know how should I say Workers' Party, I guess, and whatever, and everyone was in shock. I believe that made everything, that accelerated the whole process of me getting fired. I was going to get fired anyway, but it made everything really, like,
And that was like more than 10 years ago.
12 years ago.
12 years ago.
It was 12 years ago.
In
right
the
before
meantime,
the
you also covered a lot of other elections. And if you compare this one to, and also the sensitivity around certain topics, is to cover this election, is it different than the others?
Certainly, because back then I didn't feel threatened, or other friends of mine. I mean, you really have to be careful. If there's so much tension in these in these cities, like in the city, for example, in Erzurum, or Edirne, in the very west part of Turkey. As someone who is also working for foreign press, you have to be critical about the Kurdish question, and also Erdogan. You have to be careful, maybe more than any other journalist. So this is one of the difficult parts. For example, you have to plan your trip, let's say, in some regions, in some districts, very carefully, because you could get into the danger talking to people on the street, if you get singled out by some fanatic AKP or MHP voters.
You mean carefully means not telling anyone, or?
Not, but you don't want to risk your work, because you want to complete the thing you're doing there, so you don't want to get chased away. For example, one of the reporters, he was reporting during in the aftermath of the two big earthquakes, and I believe it was in Maraş, maybe in one of the cities, maybe epicenter of the earthquake, and then someone wanted to attack him with an axe. With an axe. Yeah, a guy came, stopped his car, got off the car, and then he had a hammer in his hand, so people stopped him from attacking the journalists. So back then, it wasn't like this. I mean, we were really, I felt, we never had a democracy in Turkey of which we can be proud, we can be proud of. But still, I felt more secure back then. Absolutely, and not only me. I mean, I'm just talking about me now, but all my
because
friends.
For yourself, if you go to Turkey now, you always check with your lawyer. Is there a court case? Can I go or not?
Yes. On the European side, there are no, how do you say it? There are no trials or nothing dangerous waiting for me. So, but we also have to check on the Asian side, on the Anatolian side. So they are going to check. So
after this program, you're going to check first before you go?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah.
Okay. Before we dive totally into the elections, let's take a step back and look at the bigger framework, because there's a new generation of nearly 5 million new voters who actually never known any other leader than the current president. And if you look at the AKP, what is, according to you, the legacy of 20 years of AKP rule, if you're looking at Turkish society right now?
Okay.
Big question.
Erdogan's legacy, actually, it's Erdogan's legacy. AKP wouldn't exist if you take Erdogan out of it. But Erdogan's legacy started actually much earlier, when he was elected mayor in Istanbul. haven't told about the first time so much often of the first time when I met him. It was '93, before he got elected mayor. And I met him with a group of German students in his party's headquarters in Istanbul. And he was so different. He was so ambitious, you know. He was so critical. He was so anti-system. He was so openly critical of Kemalism and so on. I thought to my friends, you know, oh, I think he wants to become prime minister. And I was right. But that wasn't all. How could I know back then that he would change the meaning of presidency? He would change the whole system and make himself president here. Back then, he was already working on networking, I would say, in this segment of the population which felt disadvantaged in Turkey, politically, economically, because they go hand in hand, I believe. They didn't feel themselves, and they weren't belonging to the political elite or economic elite in the country, because they were religious conservatives. And Erdogan and his party, later his party too, it's then beginning of the 2000s, he first gave this feeling of, he first gave these people this feeling of I matter, and I will have a say in government. This guy in power is going to represent me. When he was elected mayor, and it wasn't only him, for his party, previous party, it was a huge success in Turkey. They got many, many districts. They won in many, many cities. And they started to change the economic, how should I say, structure. Who would, this time the Anatolian, the more middle-ranged companies would take the tenders, they would go and make some business, and people started to get this feeling of power. And later on, after the, it was a very good timing actually, because there was this economic crisis, 2002, and right afterwards there were elections, and then he won the elections. He was politically banned back then, but it was his party, AKP, he had founded this party, and he said to everyone, we are a democratic party, we are conservative but democratic, and we want to make things better than before. And also some liberal leftists believed in him for a while. But the most important thing is, back to your question, it's a little bit like in Europe too, because the working class, some people in the working class, or in some cities, the majority even, started to vote for, not for the Social Democratic Party anymore, but for Erdogan. Because he made it possible to build a new middle class, I would say. And this middle class was taking the place of the Republican elites. And also the economy, it's always like that. If there's a crisis, the government who has to deal with the crisis has to come with some measures, IMF policies, which also brings some disadvantages for these governments. And then they lose, like PASOK in Greece, for example. It was a disaster for PASOK. Mm-hmm. They won after the election, but they couldn't manage it because there wasn't a real plan. So in Turkey, Erdogan just continued the policies, the monetary policy, and so on. He had to, because there was this deal with IMF. And then the country, for 10 years, for a good 10 years, for the first decade, people became wealthier. So you saw these conservative, working class people getting middle class, and also the business people, the small entrepreneurs or medium range entrepreneurs, a little bit in better positions. They were able to go to holidays, buy themselves cars, because the rates were low, and so they were able to buy cars with credits and so on. So they still remember how Erdogan changed life for them. And there's also this clientelist relations, of course. So they don't want to lose these advantages, but they have already lost it. This is the thing. But it's not the only thing. There is something else, if I may continue. I believe that the most important element now for Erdogan voters is the narrative of a strong Turkey and a strong leadership.
I want to interrupt you, and let's look at a campaign video I found. So if you can start that one. It's a very short video of the AKP
but you love
they
it.
made for these elections. You don't know?
Yes.
Burası çoklu kuaför dükkanı. Burada birbirinden farklı tam 8 kuaför tarafından hizmet alırsınız. Bu da bildiğiniz, güvendiğiniz kuaför dükkanı.
Senin tercihin hangisi?
Actually, at the very end, he should give a slap, on the... This is how we got used to this.
So for the ones who don't understand Turkish, so it's obviously a barber, and the hairdresser says in the first part, so your hair will be cut by 8 different hairdressers, and the results is what you saw. And in the second part, it's just one hairdresser, the one you trust, the one you know. And in the end, he says, so which one do you choose?
Very clever, because the guy who comes as the single and the best hairdresser wears the exact same jacket as Erdogan. So this is really, oh my God. They came up with this.
And because if I can make a step to the election, if you look at some polls, the government parties still have somewhat around 40%. So is this the message they fall for, the trust and the stability?
They still fall for this message because this argument of Erdogan that coalitions are no good for the country, they somehow buy it. They buy
you
it.
mean political coalitions are not good? That's what he
says.
Yeah,
because in this nations alliance, there are 6 parties.
The opposition.
Yes. This is the opposition alliance, one of the bigger alliance, and there's this leftist one. But he wants to make life difficult for the 6 parties, and that's the solution he found. I don't know how. I believe that they were targeting the younger voters with this film, but I really expected at the very end that he would give him a slap on a head, because that's his style,
And
that was missing.
You mentioned...
Okay, now you can go.
You mentioned the narrative. Which narrative do you mean?
The narrative of a very strong leader, because he was the guy who told Perez, or the moderator as well, back years ago in Davos, 1 minute. And that was even in the Arab world, and rightly in the Arab world, because it is another subject. But he gave this impression of being really the one who would stand up against all injustice. So that's what people believe somehow in Turkey, because they don't hear the truth, actually. Some news they happen to see, and also social media, there's lots of disinformation. And they don't see, for example, how he was almost attacking a farmer once upon a time, or also slapping, allegedly, and one can actually also see it a little bit, slapping someone after the biggest mine accident in Turkey because he was protesting him. So this is his, he's flexing his muscles all the time. And those who don't like the leftist, pro-Kurdish, and also laicist, I would say, secularist policies, parties, they like him as such a leader. And he is also referring to the roots of Turkey, to the Ottoman Empire. But in the last couple of years, in the last decade maybe, he is also praising Atatürk a lot, which he didn't do back then. Just the contrary. I mean, he made this analogy in this very first meeting of me and others with him. He compared him to the holy cow in India sitting on a railway. And he said, in India, if a cow sits on a railway, the train won't continue. It will stand still until the cow goes away. And in Turkey, we have such a cow as well, and we are going to make it, or him, go away, leave the railroad, so the country can make some progress. Really? I mean, I heard it. It's true. But he's also praising Atatürk, and through Atatürk, he's also trying to consolidate some of this figure, strong leadership figure, and most importantly, in defense industries, the unmanned aerial vehicles, drones, built by his son-in-law, not the ex-minister of finance, not the
other one,
the more intelligent one. Yeah. Well, he is also building an unmanned. He has already developed an unmanned jet fighter. Turkish jet fighter. And there are billions of dollars worth exports. Not only him, also the state defense industry made a lot of progress. And he also has this big ship now where the drones, they call it an, how do you say it? Uçak gemisi.
Flight boat, I don't know.
Sorry, aircraft carrier. Aircraft carrier, thank you very much. They call it an aircraft carrier, but the aircraft it can carry is quite small, like the drones. It can carry unmanned vehicles and vehicles. And but these are things which also, not only in Turkey, impresses the voters, his voters, but also here in Netherlands and also in Germany, because the diaspora needs some national pride too, wants to enjoy this feeling of having a strong country, coming from a strong country, having its roots in such
But going
a country.
back a bit, because you said in the beginning, before he came to power, he said to people, you're going to matter. You know, people who belong to marginalized group, they became wealthier, got on powerful positions. You say right
and
now...
lots of corruption.
A lot of corruption, and now there's also a lot of disinformation, so a lot of people don't see maybe actually what happens, but still they have to feel the economy, right? They have to feel it's not going good. So how would you explain that still people, of course people might be afraid to lose certain positions, but if you're talking more about normal people, they have to feel life is hard right now in Turkey, and they don't think it's because of him or the AKP.
They think it's because of Kılıçdaroğlu, the opponent. Who is not in power, who has not been in power forever, I would say. They really, I mean, there are some vox pops on YouTube and so on. You cannot believe, yeah, the prices are high, inflation is high. Why? Because of Kılıçdaroğlu. Really? Or because of the foreign enemies.
And those are?
Maybe you guys too, I don't know. I mean, like... Netherlands, Germany, especially Germany, cannot stand the level of prosperity and democracy in Turkey. Yeah, that's what Erdogan says every time. I mean, yeah, the United States and so on and so forth. On the other hand, Russia supports him. I mean, Putin supports him. It's a strange relationship because the son-in-law of Erdogan is selling Ukraine these drones, which in turn bomb the Russian brigades and so on. But still, this channel. Erdogan channel, let me call it, where Putin and the rich people, oligarchs from Russia, can channel their money out, their assets out, just bypassing the embargo. This is more important probably for Putin. So he just lets the drones bomb the brigades and the soldiers, but he's doing business with Erdogan. And recently, he just postponed, the Russian gas company postponed the payment, debt payment of Erdogan. So why now, right before the elections? And Erdogan is promising to distribute gas for free gas for a month, in July. Natural gas, yeah. And then there should be a reduction in prices. But, you know, Putin is indirectly supporting him. You should know this.
And so you explained how people are still behind Erdogan.
So this is also, I'm sorry, I interrupted you, but the Gezi revolts, of course.
In 2013.
Right, my friend?
The protests.
The protests, yeah. I mean, which some other friends too were part of. Like, I also report, I as a journalist was there, of course, first of all, but there were a couple of times where I also chanted slogans. Yeah, I mean, he is accusing, actually, he is accusing Osman Kavala, actually. Osman Kavala...
A philanthropist and
is a
businessman.
And
who is in jail right now. Yeah.
He's a very good human being, really. And he was arrested on mid of October 2017. And then he was imprisoned on 1st of November 2017. In a recent interview he gave, he is being accused of supporting or of financing a movement throughout the country where millions of people were part of, like literally financing it. He had sent a plastic chair and some sandwiches to the park, Gezi Park, during the revolt, and that's financing. In a recent interview, he also tells what kind of a nonsense this is.
And he's serving a life sentence right now, right?
Yes, yes. Well, Osman thought that he would be released soon, and I was hoping that he would be released in a year, maybe. I thought maybe Erdogan wants to create some kind of a chilling effect for the civil society, for democratic forces and so on. But then, as I was expecting to get things better in 2018, things got worse. And then 17 other people, some he didn't do anything with. I mean, they maybe somehow crossed each other somewhere, but, you know, somehow with evidence collected by Gülenists, who are, by the way, this is really a difficult lecture maybe for you, for those Gülenists, the cleric, who is accused to have planned the coup attempt.
In 2016.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. He and his police and judiciary were following us, we found out. You know, I was also good friends with Osman, and we were trying to establish an independent web TV back then, but we couldn't because everyone was afraid and we couldn't get any financial support. Anyway, with the evidence collected back then, Erdogan, in 2017, wanted to imprison him, and he did it. And today he has been sentenced for life. And then there are other friends, very important civil society figures. They have been sentenced to 18 years, 8 years. They are in prison, and there are some who had to leave the country. Mm-hmm. And they were acquitted, actually. But then Erdogan was so furious about it, and he was accusing this movement all the time. It's because of Gezi. It started with Gezi. After 2013, our economy went...
collapsed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he thinks that it's our fault. And his voters, they also think it's... Osman's fault, or this is Osman. I hope that we are going to see each other soon, before he will spend 6 years full in prison. I mean, I hope that this election will really end the arbitrary detention, imprisonment of many, many people, amongst them Osman.
And why do you think this election is going to be a turning point? Because that's what you wrote a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Because you just explained how people still back the AKP and Erdogan. So why why do you think it's going to be different now?
Because we cannot stand it anymore. I mean, we cannot take it anymore. I mean, it's the democratic forces, also young voters, many of them in the country. They want to enjoy freedom, finally. Can you imagine? I mean, this is a constitutional right. People have the right to go take the streets, to demonstrate in a peaceful manner. But just because the Minister of Interior wants it that way, people get detained, arrested every week. For example, I'm talking about the mothers of the Saturday mothers, they call themselves. It's like the mothers of Del Mayo
In Argentina.
in Argentina. And they are, it's been years, they are demonstrating every Saturday in the city center for their missing children and family members. And it's, even though the Constitutional Court also decided that it's their very right, they are not allowed, they are banned from it. So people really cannot take it anymore. And
you think a
Erdogan,
majority cannot take it anymore?
It's the majority. It's the majority. Erdogan still gets, along with MHP, something like about 40%. This is sad. This is really sad. I'm checking, in order to understand the mindset, I'm going and checking the reels on social media, the stories being told them, and you know, even in the same reel, within the same reel, in a 1 minute reel, there are so many contradictions, and they don't think, they don't question. It has something to do with the political culture too, I believe. This part of the society wants to have Erdogan, a strong Erdogan, and that's like an authoritarian father, which gives you the feeling of security in the family. You're afraid of him. And it's a bit like Stockholm syndrome, maybe. I don't know. You're afraid of him, but you respect him. Is it respect or being afraid? Or he knows the best. So you don't have to think about anything because he's telling you what to do, how many kids you should have. Really, I'm not joking. You should have 4 kids. You should get married, of course, and have 4 kids, at least. I mean, women are, of course, they should have the same rights, but they are not equal as men by nature, he says. Divorce is bad. Don't get divorced, if possible. Things like that. So whatever you think, I mean, even how many cigarettes you should smoke a day. So they don't have to think about anything. That's maybe also very comfortable for them. It's really comfortable. They are the more happy side of the society, part of the society, whereas the majority, a slight majority, I would say, are very much disturbed by the fact, and you know, even the kids of families who are Erdogan voters, they want to have a better future. Through the social media, okay, there are lots of lies, disinformation, stupid things flying around, but they know that feminists are not demons. They know that LGBTI plus people are normal people, you know, like they can talk to them because their parents didn't have the opportunity to meet anyone and get into discussion. But they do it all the time on the social media. So they don't like the perspective Erdogan is giving them, most of them. I mean, I interviewed lots of people, young people, children of conservative families, religious, Islamist, even belonging to some sects, and so on. And I was really surprised. They have, for example, WhatsApp groups. They have websites where they share their own stories. Lots of girls, they want to get rid of their scarves, headscarves. Some of them want, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they are against the wearing headscarf. They are just against people, men, telling them what to wear and what not. Things like that, you know? So people, actually, younger people, conservative, or not, they know how to get along together. And I hope very much that this will play a bigger role in the decision of the 5 million young voters, first voters, than this narrative of a strong Turkey and strong Erdogan.
I started my introduction also mentioning the earthquakes of February 6 in the southeast of Turkey, where over 48,000 people died. And so the elections are also arriving at a domestic turmoil. And we can also not ignore this disaster, of course, if we look at the role of the authorities and the upcoming elections. And I want to introduce Meltem Halaceli. And she's a writer and an Arabist. And she wrote her debut about her family history in 2015, and she's currently writing her second book. She was recently followed by a documentary called The Naschok, The Aftershock, by the VPRO, when providing aid to her family in Antakya in Turkey after the earthquakes. And tonight we ask her to tell us about the effect of the earthquakes and also about her vision for the future of Turkey. So give her a warm welcome, Meltem Halaceli.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me and for having me this talk, which is not going to be easy. My dream for a new Turkey. Ever since I can remember, I've had conversations with my parents about political current affairs in their native country, Turkey. One of my father's unforgettable opinions was that in Turkey you live by chance. There is no one who protects your rights when you have problems. Despite of this profound, sad view, my parents passed on their deep love for Turkey to me by traveling there every summer, ever since I was a child. Every summer, Turkey became a little part of me. I became an Antakyalı. While I was doing my research, as Zara just mentioned, the forgotten history of my grandfather, Süleyman Haccali, in which I translated the memoirs of my Alawi grandfather from Adana, who was a conscripted soldier in the First World War, so he experienced the whole founding of the nation, of the Turkish Republic. I learned that the national Turkish history is abundant in celebrations of victories, but reflection on defeats are scarce. Is infatuated with national holidays rather than honoring the victims of massacres. It is fond of resignation to God's will instead of maximizing efforts to prevent death. Turkey's history has known many forgotten earthquakes, like the Dersim massacres, the Armenian genocide, and the continuous displacement and erasing identities of the Alawi minorities. Astonished, I observed that the devastating earthquakes of 3 months ago have also been thrown into the pit of oblivion. As one of my favorite writers, Ece Temelkuran also summarizes it in her international debut. Today, Turkey has become a true master of the forgetfulness that is perfected through repetition of the practice of forgetting, disinterest and blindness that started in the wake of the country's founding. Everyone on the streets will tell you the same. Turkey has the memory of a goldfish. So you can imagine that I felt the urge to write an ode for Antakya, and it's still difficult for me to talk in past tense of the city because in my imagination it is still there, and Hatay also is still there. A magnificent picture of my grandfather holding me in his lap in front of your waterfalls, flowing in the green valley of Harbiye, is a witness to that. Every summer we would drive from the Netherlands to you with the car. With great excitement, we braved through the dangerous mountain roads through the Amanos to finally make the turn to the south. Down in the valley, we finally saw you lying stretched out. As a child, I became much excited nearing the Armutlu neighborhood, the Pears neighborhood, of the district of Laurel, where my mother grew up in a newborn street. The prospect of your warmth and unconditional love was close. Antakya. In the summer seasons, you turned into the core that pulled our family, driven apart by life in various countries, together. You made our family whole again. Because of you, we were with many. Antakya, you smell of myrtle, of basil and immortelle. Sorry. Your mountains that embrace the city and rivers that flow through you, you have covered it with poppies, olive groves, and pomegranate trees, and many, many more nature. You harbor the traces of different historical civilizations, such as the world's first church that we visited so many times, the last Armenian mountain village of Vakıflı, or Samandağ, where the El Khidr tomb shines in the sun. As a child, my mother would celebrate Shabbat with her childhood friend, Semiramis, and with Janet, she would paint eggs at Easter. You offer different traditions and abundance of space and time, allowing Christians, Alawis, Jewish, and Sunni communities to get to know each other by participating in each other's sacred celebrations, dancing at each other's weddings, supporting each other during funerals. You give my grandmother the bakhur, the frankincense, in which she recites her prayers for my ancestors who rest in your earth, and for the well-being for her grandchildren who live in Europe. You are an ancient safe haven where people who do not conform to dominant interpretations are allowed to be who they are. You are a city with an ancient wisdom, society, and tolerance far ahead of us. Until February 6th, I wrote a poem. It's 4:17. Is there anyone who can hear my voice? Come back. Do you hear my voice? Come back, please. Don't leave me here. I'm still under the rubbles of wrong decisions, the rubbles of corruption and unscrupulousness, the rubble of failed leaders. Hey, I'm screaming. Can't you hear my voice? I'm still here. I'm still breathing. I still hope. Come back. And if you won't come back, and if you won't hear my voice, promise me you'll return someday. Promise me you'll rebuild my Antakya. Promise me that my city will rise again in all its wealth and history. Do not forget about me. Messages were flooding in our smartphones of desperate family members, digging in the rubble with their own bare hands in search of their loved ones. One of them is from my cousins, Nejmi and Adnan. They live in Hengelo, a city in the east of Holland, and their parents, Sherif and Shakire, sister Edibe, and her husband Melik, and daughter Duygu were under the rubble. And there was no rescue team, no aid, nothing, for the first 72 hours. My mother's tears when receiving the messages and my father's wet eyes at her sight of her tears, which I couldn't stop, are carved in my memory. I've never seen so many men cry in those coming days and weeks. My cousins traveled to Antakya themselves, hoping to save their parent and sister. Unfortunately, they all perished while waiting for help. Bekleye bekleye öldüler. Like many Antakyalı now are painfully repeating, evlerimiz mezarımız oldu. Our homes have become our graves. Because with the collapse of buildings, lives collapsed, friendships collapsed, trust collapsed, relationships collapsed. People say now, we have all perished, but a few of us are just standing. My uncle Nihat and my aunt Medine, daughter Tuğçe and granddaughter Mercan, who were running a hotel, have lost everything. They live outside Antakya at the moment, hoping for the moment they can return, because they do not see a future anywhere else than Antakya. My cousin Sezgin returned to help other victims. You can see him. My family is lucky that my grandmother Bedia, born in 1939 in Antakya, when Antakya became part of Turkey, was visiting my uncle in Istanbul when the earthquake occurred. But now we are struggling to explain to her that she cannot go back into the city where she was born and she lived her whole life. So while people froze to death in the rubbles, waiting endlessly for help, and the media was astonished by the sale of the tents by the Red Crescent, the emergency law was installed. Cunningly new decrees were issued that threatened the cultural heritage and the lifestyle of the colorful inhabitants of Antakya. The state is once again obsessed with cleansing cultural and natural heritage and aiming profit. The rapid city plans have become a show for the elections. Residents of Antakya and Samanda, who literally just crawled from under the rubble, are now confronted with asbestos being dumped in their surroundings and gardens, as you can see. Survivors are now protesting. Hüznümüz isyanımız olur. Mərəhna nihna hon. Our grief is our resistance. We will not leave. They say, birbirimizin çaresi biziz. Nihna ma'anin ba'dna. The only ones we can rely on are ourselves. It makes me so proud to see the strength and the solidarity has not collapsed. Therefore, my wish for a Turkey after the elections is in which every home is built according to earthquake regulations, those that the president himself was supporting in the beginning of his appointment. I wish the authorities are held accountable to uphold these regulations. I wish that every city and village has a dignified monument for its local history, and commemorations will be organized, not just for earthquakes, but other previous disasters as well. I wish that every reconstruction is inclusive, because only then this very much democratic reform can hopefully start. Finally, I hope. I wish that people never have to worry again that their homes will collapse when the next earthquake occurs and the environment will be saved. I wish after this election, earthquakes will never again take so many lives, and that my father no longer has to utter in pain that in Turkey you are left to your destiny. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Meltem. Thank you for your beautiful and impressive words. And yes, let's hope all together that the new homes will be built according to the earthquake regulations. Banu, the earthquakes plays, of course, a huge role in the elections. Can you explain something about this?
Well, I call it, what the government did wasn't disaster management. I call it a management disaster, because as Meltem said, people for days tried to find their beloved ones under the rubble on their own, and some of them under the rubble tried to make their way outside. I mean, it's so hard to imagine. I mean, that was an unlucky time for me, because as a journalist, I wasn't able to go there. I had to go stay at in a hospital because of some lung problems. But I was trying to bring people together in order to find some light equipment or generators or some operators for the vehicles, some teams of miners and so on. It was crazy. From my partner's side, 5 people, they also perished. And well, I was talking not only to these family members, but also other people the whole time. And I don't believe that these people I was talking to who were telling about this crazy situation, unbearable situation, they are ever going to vote for Erdogan or for president or for his party or for MHP. But there are still some people who say this was the disaster of the century, no matter which government would be in power, which party would be in power, no one could do anything, because that's true, it was a very big disaster. But there were warnings. There were warnings for years by geologists. So people knew about it, people saw it coming, exactly like in Istanbul. But instead of competency, Erdogan chose people according to the principle of loyalty. And he placed them in these higher positions in disaster management. For example, one of the guys who was in top position for dealing with the situation in the aftermath was a theologist, we found out. And then he was replaced by some more competent guy who somehow had become ambassador to an African country. He was somehow awarded some post. He had to come back because he knew how to deal with it. So, and there weren't tents. There weren't enough manpower to deal with the situation. And also the teams who came from other countries, they were stopped from doing their job and saving lives because the centralist approach of Erdogan, he wants to be the one who controls everything, who decides on everything, was the same issue again. It was the same. That was the reason why nobody could get coordinated. No civil society groups or rescue teams could get together and coordinate the work they could do. I mean, look, at Gezi, people just came together with different with similar thoughts and reactions and needs, and like that, they were able to organize everything: food, health services, everything during this Occupy movement. I mean, people would be able to do it after the earthquake too, because for example, I met some health workers who went there, who tried to go to this region desperately, and who arrived there because it wasn't allowed, and some airports were also damaged, okay? But once they were there, they had to wait until they were ordered to go somewhere. And they spent hours a day doing nothing. So this is really crazy. So I don't think that people will really, even many AKP voters will vote for him again in the region. There will be some, but especially in Antakya, there is this feeling, I don't know, you maybe hear it too, but people in Antakya, Hatay, have the impression that they have been treated differently because of their religion, their religious belief, because they are Alevi and mostly also Arabs. And that's what they believe. I have so many friends from Hatay, and they stayed so alone, they were so helpless. In other cities, there was much more going on. And in Hatay, for a very long time, They had to deal with everything on their own. And they were sentenced. Somehow, that's what they thought, yeah.
You already talked about people put on certain positions on the basis of loyalty and not because of their capability, their experience, their knowledge. If, and this will be for now my last question, because I want to see if there are questions in the audience also. I have a lot of questions, but maybe first see if you have anything else to ask. But if we're talking about the period after the election, if you're talking about how to, let's say the opposition wins, how to heal this country, but because it doesn't mean that the persons who are in certain positions in the judiciary, in the military, are immediately gone. There are a lot of people who are there. So can you explain a bit, can you say something about this?
Well, it will be difficult to make things good again, but it's not impossible. What I mean is, Erdogan is the guy at the moment who also has the legislative power. He minimized the power of the parliament, and he, through the system, the Turkish presidential system, he made it possible to govern a country through presidential decrees in the force of law. They are in the force of law. So he, for example, made a list of people who were appointed by him and whose period of, whose job would also finish along with the president. But then he made lots of exceptions too. The chief of the intelligence, he is going to leave his job if Erdogan loses, because he was appointed by Erdogan. But it's not the same for the military, for top positions. However, the military chief he will have to leave this year, so he's going to be changed. This is a very important position still. And there are some other top positions. Kılıçdaroğlu, if he would be president, wouldn't be able to change without another decree. So what he's going to do is, he will, at the very beginning, for some top bureaucratic positions, he is going to use the legislative power Erdogan created for himself, thinking that he would never lose the the presidency, his position. So that's why he started to say, you know what, actually we should do some revision in the system. And he didn't go into details, but I believe that's the revision he's talking about, because he never thought that he could lose his position as president. So Kılıçdaroğlu is going to use this power for some time, but it's not only about who will be elected as president, it's also about the majority in the parliament, because the opposition wants to change the system again, back to the parliamentary one, but a better parliamentary system. For this, you really need at least 360 voters, seats in the parliament. And this, the main opposition alliance could only reach this majority along with the leftist alliance. I believe together they may manage to get a little bit more than 360 seats. So there could be a constitutional change, right, which will go to referendum again. But this is the beginning only. I mean, I will be very happy if Kılıçdaroğlu, Erdogan's opponent, who is also supported by the leftist alliance, I will be very happy if he'll be elected president, because he also talked for the first time. He said, "I'm an Alevi, and people can." This is, I mean, being an Alevi. This is the religious belief.
Minority.
Yeah. But we can talk about it later. So many things he should have done much earlier, but he's done them anyway. He's speaking about his roots and everything. Anyway, I would be very happy, but this will be the beginning only. We should get concentrated. We should concentrate on the next coming 2 years, because if there will be a constitutional change for a better parliamentary system, in 2 years we are going to have elections again. And these 2 years are very important. Kılıçdaroğlu and his allies are going to get some foreign investment within these 2 years. The Turkish lira will, I hope, improve as well. And the value is now, I mean, it's incredible. And the economy, if the economy will be better in the couple of, in the coming 2 years, then there's a good chance that this opposition can win elections again. If not, if they cannot control this instrument called state, which was instrumentalized and politicized by Erdogan, if they cannot control it, if they cannot make it work properly and find some solutions, then in 2 years, who knows, maybe Erdogan, who would lose now, could win again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is a beginning and a very critical period in the history of Turkey. So it will be a long exit before the long last exit before the bridge, we say. We're crossing the bridge every day, right, in Istanbul. So if you miss that exit, you'll find yourself on the other side.
Is there anyone who has a question? I have a lot of cards, but I want to, yes, okay, yes, that's what I thought. So my colleague Carlijn will come to you with the mic. Here, you can take this one. She will hold it. And please, a question, no essays, just a question mark. Yeah, here in the middle I see 2 people.
Frederica, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Good to see you, and thank you. I love listening to you. And to you too, Meltem. Thank you very much. I'm into the Kurdish issue, of course, but I'm also into press freedom. And I was going to ask you something about that. Because if Kılıçdaroğlu wins, what do you think will happen in journalism in Turkey? All these papers, all these TV channels, CNN, Turk, all of them, they have totally given themselves to Erdogan and rejected all journalism rules and ethics. What will they do if Erdogan loses and Kılıçdaroğlu takes over? What will happen? What do you predict?
Okay. And about the Kurdish question, you said?
Nothing about the Kurdish question now.
You said. Okay, all right. We talked.
Something different.
Yeah. Okay. So shall I answer now? Okay. Very good question. Because I was really trying to find an answer to this very important question: how can we rewind the media capture, or I mean, what the owners of these channels are going to do? And I believe that they are already looking for new editor-in-chiefs. But they are not planning to get rid of the pro-Erdogan journalists or hitmen, I would say, who write and just target the opposition and so on. They will preserve them, because I believe, Frederica, that in these coming 2 years, we all will have a better idea who the ultimate winner is going to be. And if there is a chance of Erdogan coming back, then it's good to keep them aside and make them have good relations with the government, with the team of Erdogan, who are going to be in the parliament, most probably. All the ministers, they are candidates now. So it's going to be this way. So they will try to find a balance, and we'll see. But in 2 years, it will be more different. Today, I read somewhere that CNBC is coming back to Turkey. They had left Turkey because it didn't make much sense reporting about the economic situation, because there were also trials, you know, some journalists were accused of provoking the society because they had quoted some predictions about the Turkish lira US dollar parity. Can you imagine? I mean, because they reported about the possible outcomes of Erdogan's policy, they were tried. But this is also an indication that we will have better news to share in near future.
There is another question here on your right. Yeah.
Hello. My question is about EU relations in case of a change of government in Turkey.
Yes.
I think there are issues we need to solve between Turkey and the EU, including the membership, the refugees, and dumping plastic waste to Turkey. What do you think will happen on those issues in general if Kılıçdaroğlu and the team wins?
Mm-hmm.
Big issues.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, what did we say? Dumping the plastic. Refugees, and there was one more thing I would like to add: the customs union, improving it, and the visa problems. But they go hand in hand. The negotiations with the European Union had been frozen for a very long time, and there are some reasons, of course, like Turkey not abiding the request of improving, changing, or abolishing the anti-terror law. So this is a law which could make you all terrorists. You see, so it could be used against anyone here. So, but for Erdogan, for his government, it's very important to have stick to this law, because this is a part of the narrative. He says that there are terrorists everywhere, from Gülenists to Kurds, to the communists, whatever. You don't have to belong to any. You don't have to have any affiliation. You may be a terrorist too if you criticize certain policy, especially the Kurdish policy, or the existence of Turkey in Syria, Turkish military in Syria. The other problem is the Cyprus issue, because and also the problems Turkey and Greece have with each other in the Aegean Sea. So there should be a new beginning if there would be a government change, if Kılıçdaroğlu would be the president, would become the president. I believe that he should try to convince the Greek side and also the Cypriot side not to block the dialogue of Turkey with this government, not to block the negotiations, because the Turkish side doesn't recognize the Cypriot Republic. Cyprus is there's a Turkish side, and the Turkish side is not being recognized by the European Union as well, for those who don't know. the subject. This is one of the other issues, and I believe that there will be some improvements on the anti-terror law. I don't know if they would suddenly go and get rid of the whole system, but there will be changes. And the refugee customs union, the technicalities first, customs union should also be improved because Turkey is very much disadvantaged in selling goods, exporting goods to the European Union, whereas goods from the European Union are free to enter Turkey. So there is a discrepancy, imbalance, I would say. And the refugee issue, well, it was referred as a dirty deal, as you will remember. The architect, I would say, the founder of this idea was a German ex-bureaucrat or some advisor to Angela Merkel. I have to say, Angela Merkel, through this agreement with Turkey, gained a lot of reaction, but also it was important for her to say that Germany was going to accept 1 million Syrian refugees. So Germany was the only country who accepted so many Syrian refugees in Europe. It was the most generous attitude policy vis-à-vis the migrants. And that's why she lost the elections. She lost her support among her voters. But this is not a good deal because you cannot expect from any country, unless it's a very big country like the United States, but even the United States, Trump, tried to build a wall and things like that. So you cannot expect more than 4 million people to live in a country where they are not really wanted. I'm telling you this from the point of view of the Syrian refugees.
And if you would look at the new possible government, how would they then see this issue?
Kılıçdaroğlu wants to make a new deal, I believe, with the European Union. There are lots of people who could really find a place to live in Europe. Come on, I mean, there could be more refugees in Netherlands. There could be more refugees in any other European country. They are better off than Turkey. And the financial help the European Union has promised and also is channeling to Turkey isn't enough, isn't really enough. There are, I mean, I'm really very, very much disturbed and very sad whenever I see the racist, I'm calling it racist, reactions vis-à-vis refugees, no matter who they are, from, but mostly from Arab countries, and also Afghans. And I'm afraid that this tension could lead to worse situations, like after the earthquake, people were accusing, even some reporters were really suggesting that the refugees, the illegal ones, were stealing goods from the rebels and so on. And there were some lynch mobs. And then, tragically, or how should I say? I don't know. I mean, it's tragicomic, maybe. I don't know if I could call it like this. The ones they attacked turned out to be Turks. They thought, the mob thought that they were Syrians, for example, and they were robbers. But no, It wasn't the case.
I'm going to interrupt you because there was also a plastic part, but we leave that to the third round at the
No,
bar
I mean,
because
they
I saw a lot of
shouldn't bring
hands.
it. Yeah, sorry,
So-
I just told a lot. But this isn't fair, people. This isn't fair to a country which deals with so many economic problems. But first of all, it's not fair vis-à-vis the refugees. And most of these refugees, they don't have any homes left behind. So maybe there isn't war. I mean, the situation in Aleppo and so on is better, maybe. In Syria, maybe the clashes are not that fierce as they used to be. But they don't have any home to go back. So you should maybe also try to convince your governments to do more on this. I believe that it's a total hypocrisy what the European Union, in terms of refugee policy is or migration policy is showing us.
Point made. Another question.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I can't talk.
No, it's okay. I just see a lot of
non-stop
hands,
about
so
this.
I want
Sorry.
to try to get a lot of people. Please.
My question is connected with the last question. If Erdogan defeat, what do you think? Lots of things will change, but what about racism in Turkey? What about xenophobia or Armenophobia or Kurdophobia in Turkey? Are you thinking the last 20 years Turkish people criticize their decisions, or in the future they will select again new Erdogan 2.0s?
Well, the xenophobia, racism, these are things, problems we face in Europe too. Let me underline it first. And also in Germany, because I live there, I spent most of the time of the year there. I have to say that there's this problem of structural racism in some states in Germany, like Hessen and so on. And none of the countries really, or governments really try to go to the root causes and fight against it. But in Turkey, the problem is people, maybe it's everywhere like that, but they don't accept that they are having that their attitude is a racist one or xenophobic one. And it makes me really sad. I believe the majority of voters in Turkey have bad sentiments vis-à-vis the refugees. And maybe the leftist alliance, because they are going to have a say in the parliament, in the legislation for some important changes in the constitution and so on, they may slowly change it. They may slowly make the society realize that it's not good to say F off Syrians or whatever. I mean, on Twitter we had for a while such kind of TT hashtags, and it's a problem. And to the European Union, I believe the European Union really should support, if there will be a government change, the European Union really do its best to start the negotiations again and to give Turkey a perspective for membership. This will also help, I believe.
There's here with the glasses first. Yes.
Hi, thank you. I'm John London. I'm based at Leiden University, from the US as well, where we no longer take presidential election results for granted. This is really an election of global significance. This truly is, because Erdogan actually, he wrote the book, all the stuff about the deep state, that was him. And what I'm curious about, even though we're looking beyond the election, is the integrity of the election. And I was heartened to listen to a podcast in which somebody remarked that voter turnout will expect it to be extremely high, 80 to 90%, which is absolutely unheard of in the rest of the world. Be lucky if you get half that in the United States. And yet I still have these concerns thinking about, Brasilia and Washington, D.C. What can Erdogan possibly do to reverse a result? Somebody mentioned the strength of Turkish civil society, even in the face of a bureaucracy that has been gutted and politicized. What can you say about the integrity of the upcoming elections? And we've already seen some attempts at arrests of various. How is it going to play out? Is it within the realm of possibility that Turkish civil society would be able to withstand an overt attempt to overturn an election result against Erdogan? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So in Turkey, the turnout is usually high. It's been, for a very long time, it's been about 80%. It's just how it is. Maybe because of the polarization we have in the country, we have a bigger turnout compared to other countries. But the integrity of elections, a very important question. Some friends in Germany ask me, do you really believe that he will leave if he loses? Or even in Turkey, they say, they used to say, do you believe that there will be elections at all? And I was saying, yeah, I believe that. Then, do you believe that the votes will be safe? Our votes will be secured? Well, the opposition has learned some lessons in the last couple of elections, and even though they politically they are not together, the leftist coalition, the right. This party in the main coalition, opposition, they know how to collaborate when it comes to ballots. And they make it impossible to rig the ballots, rig the election on the election day. But it's Erdogan who owns the system, meaning the judges, the members of the higher electoral board have been appointed by Erdogan. So they do whatever he says. Okay, there's this risk. But I believe this risk would exist if he would lose the election with less than 1% of votes. Let's say if Kılıçdaroğlu would get something 50 point some percent, and he would get like 49 or something, or I mean, if the difference would be too little, then he will do everything. Plus, he's controlling the channels of information, and he's trying his best to control more. His Minister of Interior tried to build a second electoral supervision system, which, surprisingly, the electoral board, the higher board, refused. He wanted to have another parallel system in the police and gendarmerie, and it was refused. But I heard now that at TRT, the public TV channel, public broadcaster, they are planning. They are also trying to work in tandem, I would say, with the electoral board. And there was a guy who, for example, stopped the flow of information, the data, in the last elections because they didn't like the results, and we didn't get any results from the state news agency for hours. It was incredible. He is supposed to do his job again. That's what we heard today. So there will be some attempts. But
we can have two last questions. So the woman there with the glasses and the guy in the middle.
Hi, everyone. I actually have a follow-up question to this. In 2015, after the elections, you know, the situation has gotten very worse, especially
in June, you mean?
Yes, in the Kurdish areas of Turkey, because that was the first time that, you know, Erdogan lost the full power. And what I'm thinking and what's fearful is that if the first round, you know, if it goes to second round, which is likely, unfortunately, what could happen in those 2 weeks? Because, you know, him losing is a very difficult sight to himself. And then, you know, this also changing potentially the view and the voters' view of and going into the second round. And, you know, that kind of feels a bit of a turmoil situation, even though we feel if we go to the second round, you know, we know what the result is going to be. But those 2 weeks, a lot can happen and change if Erdogan goes really dirty, you know, which... So I'm curious about your thoughts about this.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. That's everyone's fear. And 14 days is too long time for Erdogan to do. I mean, it's enough time for him to try other maneuvers, I would say. Well, what we witnessed back then in 2015, in the elections in June 2015, Erdogan lost, actually, the majority in the parliament. But then there wasn't enough. I mean, the other parties couldn't build the government, so there had to the elections had to be renewed. And within this period of a couple of months, terrible things happened, and the clashes started again. That meaning, for example, 2 policemen were killed, and then it was told that it's the PKK, and there was a truce, and then the Turkish jet fighters went and started to bomb the mountains where the guerrillas were positioned and so on. And then that was the end of the peacetime. And then thousands of people died again. Within the 14 days, we could again witness some provocative actions, some terror attacks. But we would never know the background, what really happens there. And Erdogan would try to frighten the society and underline his strong leadership figure. And through that, he would, and also he's accusing the Kemalists, CHP, taking sides with PKK all the time. He calls the party CHP-KK, which is not true at all. So that will be his argument. And they will also, using the artificial intelligence and deepfake features nowadays, Kılıçdaroğlu is also worried about any possible attempts by Erdogan and his trolls to go ahead with some more disinformation, like showing him taking sides with Gülenists movement or the Kurds and so on and so forth. Yeah, but the strong side of the opposition is that the strength is that people are really, half of the population at least is really tired of Erdogan.
Last question.
It will be like a thriller if we will have to wait for the second round.
My question is regarding to the voting trends of the diaspora constituents and the constituents that are living in Turkey. So do you think that is there a deepening divide between the diaspora voters, the choices, the priorities of the diaspora voters and the voters that are living in Turkey?
Mm-hmm. Well, in diaspora, we are talking about Europe mostly, right? Yeah, so the United States is different. Let's talk about Europe. And, well, in Europe, I believe there are around a little bit more than 2 million voters, 1.5 million being in Germany. And half of these voters went to ballots. In Germany, 48% this time. It was higher than the previous elections, and the majority of these voters are Erdogan and AKP supporters. We don't know about the rest, but they don't go voting because they have to go and vote in the Turkish consulates. Some of them don't want to go to Turkish consulate and vote because they find it risky. Many people who are political refugees, who used to be, who have political motives, and left Turkey and so on, they don't even want to share their addresses, give their addresses. They don't want to get registered by the consulates sometimes. And those who are registered don't want to go there. And also, you don't have ballots in every city. So for half of the voters in Europe, I have to say, this thing of belonging and being proud of their roots is an important thing. And Erdogan gives them this feeling, saying, look, you are still not 100% accepted and welcomed in the countries where you live. And I am the one who will always support you, who will always be there for you, who will going to fight for your rights, for your religion, and so on and so forth. And as long as we have a strong Turkey and strong leadership, you will be better off in the countries where you live. So they buy this argument, mostly. For example, in Netherlands, I believe, there were like 60% of votes which went to AKP in the last elections. It's a lot, but it's not all the voters who are Turkish citizens. We don't know what the rest, what the situation, how the situation would be if the rest of the population would also, voters also go to the ballots. And plus, these people, most of them came from rural areas back then. It doesn't mean necessarily that they are conservatives and religious people, etc. But most of them obviously are. So it also has something to do with some ideology, Thank
you for your insights, and for the ones who are not done talking and discussing, we do have a third round at the bar where we can discuss even more. I want to thank you, our dear audience, for listening and for asking questions. And if you want to hear more about Turkey, June 3, we have Ece Temelkuran here. So if you want to listen to her, please check out our website, thebalie.nl. I hope to see you another time, but before I wish you a good evening, I want to thank our guests, Halil Çalışkan, Meltem Halaceli, and give her one round of applause again, Banu Güven.
Thank you very much.